Hello, this is Julie Johnson-Dresbach with the Division of Developmental Disabilities. Welcome to Icap training. This is chapter 1 of a series of 6 chapters that we will be going into with the Icap training. Myself and Donna Deal, my coworker with the Division of Developmental Disabilities, is going to be providing this training, and it will be based on the South Dakota Division of Developmental Disabilities established standards that are outlined in the Icap Guidelines. So we ask that as you begin this training that you have a copy of the Icap Guidelines with you, and you certainly can get those at the link down on this page. However, if you are unable to link on that page, you can go to the Developmental Disabilities homepage under dhs.sd.gov and click on the left side Provider Resource tab, and then scroll down alphabetically to get to which is it's under Inventory for Client and Agency Planning. The guidelines are there, as well as the other resources that we have developed. The resources are they were developed in collaboration with the providers. And I'm going to take this time to put a shout out to the providers because this was a lot of work that was done in the past years to create the Icap Guidelines, and in a manner that would meet the needs of everybody. So the Icap Guidelines is a very comprehensive document that pretty much covers every item in the Icap assessment tool. So I would ask, if you've not completed an Icap or you're not that familiar with one, with someone, that you go ahead and get the Icap Guidelines. Keep them with you when you do the assessment so you can look and see what we are considering under the established standards in that area. Besides the Icap Guidelines, we have other resources, and I'm going to go over those quickly with you. We've got the Icap Quick Reference Sheet, and that is a shortened version of the Icap Guidelines. It is meant for seasoned staff that are familiar with the Icap, have done one before, just as a reminder of what we're looking for in the sections. We have the Icap Review Item, and we had this created when we were doing a review on the Icap in the agencies. We're not doing that any longer, but it is a tool that would be helpful for you to look at to see what areas that we're getting, that you need to get the information from. When an Icap is completed, it requires you looking at a lot of different information, maybe medical files, maybe progress reports, seeing what the supports are currently provided to the person for behavior, for learning adaptive skills. So the Icap Review Items Validation just tells you where you can find information for certain areas of the Icap. An example would be under the seizures, the frequency of seizures validated through the seizure logs. So that's where we would find that information. We also have a frequently asked question document that is a working document that was updated as people would send us questions. If it got to be frequent questions, then we would log them down and update the frequently asked questions document. But first we would look at the Icap Guidelines to see if there was anything that we could add to the guidelines. So the guidelines have been updated frequently, as you can see with the one that you have on the bottom of the guideline page. In the footer, it tells when the last Icap update was, on the last guideline update. So please have that with you as we move forward. All right, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Icap Inventory for Client and Agency Planning. It is an assessment that is short and it's easy to complete, and the nice thing about it is that anyone can complete it. It comes hand in hand with a software program called the Icap CompuScore software, and when the Icap assessment tool is completed, it is entered into that CompuScore program, and that's the way to have data from your Icaps, and it also will print out a 3-page summary, and we use that summary to determine if someone has limitations in any of the 7 areas of self-care. And we'll go over all of that in Chapter 6 when we talk about the eligibility worksheet. However, when you complete the Icap, we ask that it's people that know the person best If you do not know the person very well, then we would ask that it's a process where you're consulting with people that do know them well. Right now in our system, the ICAPs are required to be submitted for anyone that is getting services. Now there's a little bit of a updated system for the choices waiver, including shared living and CTS, which is now on a 3-year rotation, unless there is changes that are team requested, or changes that have happened with the person in the past. Within that 3 years, we would ask that the ICAP assessment tool be updated along with the ICAP CompuScore program, and that be submitted to the peer office. And that would be changes that are positive or negative. A person is, has learned skills where they're having a change in the needs that they have adaptively. Certainly that might be something that you'd look at, maybe to talk about as a team with the ISP team and see if a new ICAP needs to be, or an updated ICAP needs to be submitted. For sure, the best case scenario is if all the ICAPs for people could be addressed in the annual ISP process, and it could be decided as a team whether or not the ICAP needed to be submitted for a recognition of any changes that have occurred. But other than that, we are submitting the ICAPs in the choices waiver, including CTS and shared living, January 15th on a 3-year rotation, which begins in 2021. So all ICAPs for choices, including CTS and shared living, need to be updated and submitted to the division via FTP by January 15th, 2021. The ICAPs for family support and ICF continually stay on the annual rotation. Anyone that is beginning services with any of the programs, family support, ICF, choices waiver, including CTS and shared living, require an ICAP in their level of care in the initiation of services. So for sure we're going to get a completed ICAP, and it needs to be within a 36-month period. If it's older than 36 months, we cannot accept it. Again, ideally, it is updated and current when we get it, so if it's level of care. So the areas that the ICAP covers are what I like to call different puzzle pieces. And I'm covering today just some introduction to tell you a little bit about the ICAP to help you understand, why we have the considerations that we do. And the sections that we're going to talk about in future chapters is the section ABC, and then section D is adaptive, and then E is the problem, and then the rest of the ICAP and the eligibility worksheet. So when each of these sections get completed based on the current needs of the person, and you put all of them together, it does give you a pretty good snapshot of what the person's needs are. And again, the 3-page summary will tell us the service level of what the person would need for services based on the information that was input into the CompuScore program for that person. You can get copies of the ICAP assessment tool through the link here on this webinar page. Some of you might be familiar with Riverside Publishing, who used to hold the copyright on the ICAP assessment tool. It has been sold recently to this HMH assessment organization. The people that had originally published it under Riverside were 4 very distinguished physicians, and they're all gone now, unfortunately, but that tells you that it is kind of an old tool. That's one thing I wanted to point out with the guidelines. We recognize that there are some items in the ICAP assessment tool that the booklet that are old. I'll give you an example. If you look in the social living or social and communication skills, in the adaptive behavior, towards the bottom you'll see about phone books and stuff like that. And people don't really use yellow pages or phone books much anymore because they have contacts in their cell phone. And so what we've done, because we can't change the ICAP assessment tool because it's copyrighted, is we've gone into the guidelines and generalized what we would look for in those areas that are equivalent to the yellow pages or looking up in the phone book. So that's why it's real important that you have the Icap guidelines that are available to you. When the Icap was created, the gentleman that created it based it on an age-related criterion. And so what they essentially did was took a look at the expectation of people in different age groups, youth, and it's very specific on the age-related criterion based on the date of birth and how old the person is, but it was normed using people that didn't have disabilities and what the expectation was for performance. And so basically, when we're looking at the ICAP, we don't want to assess anybody any different than anybody else just because they have a disability or they don't. In the end, when it gets submitted into the Icap CompuScore program, there will be a determination of scores that we can then determine if there is limitations in any of the 7 areas of self-care. And so that's why it's real important that we are, have the age and the date of birth on the Icap so that we can calculate that based on the age-related criterion. Okay, so today we're going to cover the cover sheet of the Icap, and what I just explained to you, it was on page 1 and part of page 2 on the Icap guidelines. And so now we're going to move into the bottom part of page 2 on the guidelines, talking about the cover page and directions. Again, administering the Icap assessment does not require a specific credential. We just ask that you have the guidelines available for you, and for certain, if you have any questions at all in completing this, we ask that you contact your program specialist. You can look at the quick reference sheet to see maybe that would help you, or if you have a specific question, the frequently asked questions. If that doesn't answer what you need to know, then you can certainly contact your program specialist at any time and talk to them. And again, it's best if it's done as a the case manager or the support coordinator is typically the one that's responsible for submitting the ICAP, but it doesn't mean that they're the sole responsible party for gaining the information on the assessment. It's very much intended to be a team that is completing the ICAP. Okay, so we're going to talk about the cover sheet now. The cover sheet is our identifying information. It's basically just like any other cover sheet that you need to fill out, or the beginning of any kind of a document, where we want to have the name of the person that's being assessed. We want the legal name, and this will be the name that is the same name that is on the Medicaid claims. So then we want to have the address of the person's residence or facility. We don't want you to use a post office box or an address of your main agency or your administrative office building. We really want the person's address where they live and their city, state, and zip. And then the phone number, we'd like the phone number at the person's residence. That might be, the mom's cell phone number. If the person doesn't have their own phone, they don't answer their own phone. Or it could be their residential home, the landline at their residential home. But we would want the telephone number at the person's residence. The residential facility, we ask that you have the name of the community support provider where the person is getting services from, rather than the name of their residential home based on the agency. So if it's a provider, just put the provider's name there. If there is no residential facility, then we ask that you write NA for not applicable, because then we know that it's been looked at, there's been consideration there that, and it's not applicable. The school day program, we ask that the name of the school or the day program for the person or the employee or the company where the person works is entered here if there's nothing, NA again. The county or the district responsible, we would like to have the county or the school district with the financial responsibility for services by the for the person listed here. And it may or may not be the same county that they're living in. A lot of school districts have cooperatives, and or the person might be getting services at a program outside of the county. or outside of the co-op, I mean. So the county responsible would be indicated there. There's none, NA. The next line, case manager, again, typically the case manager of the person or the support coordinator of the person is going to be completing this because they're the last stop. They're the person who oversees it and submits it to the division. However, sometimes in level of cares or we might be getting this from the school district or from, say, an example would be HSC or developmental center or something. So, we want to make sure that we have the case manager's name that's working for the person and their phone number. The next line is the parent or guardian. We ask that the name and the phone number of the person's parent or their guardian is listed here. If the person is an independent adult with no parental guardian or oversight, then you can write NA here. Okay. The respondent, this is where we want your name, the person who completed the ICAP. Again, it might be a school district staff, it might be, another organization that is completing it, might be occupational therapy and another in an institution like HSC, for an example, and we need to have that person's name and their phone number down in the event that there's an area or an item that is not completed, that was overlooked, so that we can contact that person and find out what the response would be so that we can make sure that we have that. And the phone number, so we need the respondent and the phone number. And then relationship to client, again, it's going to be the case manager the majority of the time for our purpose, but there are times when it's not, so we ask who the respondent completed if we write the relationship, like OT, occupational therapist or teacher or something like that. And then the reason for evaluation, that can be very short, brief explanation, like level of care, 3-year update, significant change, whatever the reason is that you're putting the ICAP, submitting the ICAP for. Okay, so the box on the right side with the client ID, we do not mark anything in that box to complete the ICAP assessment. That is calculated in the ICAP CompuScore program typically, so don't worry about that box. Underneath of that is the evaluation date and the birth date box, and that does need to be filled out because, again, it's an age-related criterion, and there are parameters around the ICAP and how old it can be for the assessment tool, used as an assessment tool. So 36 months. So we want to write here the evaluation date, the date that it occurred, and it starts with the year, the month, and the day. So we would write that down, and this would be also the same date that would be in your CompuScore program so that they would jive with each other. So if you ever update the ICAP tool, then of course you've got to go in and ICAP or update the ICAP CompuScore program, and it would be that date. The birth date, very important for the age-related criterion calculation, and that would be the year the person was born, the month, and the day. And then we like to see just the person's age and years written in. That is automatically calculated in the CompuScore program, so it is on the 3-page summary already calculated. But on the booklet, we like to have that down too, because as people seek to gain information about a person in services, or if the person is seeking services at another organization, say they're moving from Rapid City to Sioux Falls or something and wants to get services in Sioux Falls, the ICAP is a pretty good tool to take a look at what services are being provided, what are needed, and how old the person is, where they're at in different skills, what their medical needs are, etc. Okay, so that concludes the first chapter of the ICAP training webinar series, and we certainly hope that you will continue on with the other chapters, and again, have your guidelines with you, and thank you.